The Templeton Twins by Ellis, Weiner. Please turn to page 206 and 207 for chapter 15. When you hear the bell, be sure to go to the top of the next page to continue reading along. Let's begin. Chapter 15. Just about everything comes together at the same time. Abigail jumped out of the car and waved the papers at Dean as he hovered in the air. Then John took Casey off of his father's lap and got out of the car, too. Casey stood behind John on a leash, looking up at the hovering, handsome, horrible man and barking. "We changed our mind," Abigail shouted to him. We're going to give you these." "Oh, really?" he said. "And why is that?" She quickly turned around and looked behind her. Past the car, past the 2 tracts of mushed grass the car had made while driving across the field, and up at the clock tower on Jerry Hall. Then she turned back to Dean and said, Because Papa remembered that you said, put it in a backpack," John called. "Knapsack," Dean shouted. "Not backpack. I said, put it in a knapsack." "Knapsack, fine," John yelled. "But if we give you this, do you promise you won't bother us anymore?" "Well, that is more like it," Dean called. "Yes, I promise. But I'm not coming down until you get that dog out of here." John yelled back, "Okay." But then, rather than moving Casey somewhere else, he looked all around the field they were on, went over to Abigail and told her something. She nodded. The 2 of them, and of course the ridiculous dog, walked with very deliberate care about 12 feet to their left, and then about 8 feet straight ahead. "Hey!" Dean cried. "Where are you going?" He had to work the personal one-man helicopter controls to reposition himself and continue his conversation with the twins. He drifted over until he was once again above and slightly ahead of them. John muttered to Abigail, "How much longer?" She now stood right next to her brother, back to back. He faced Dean. She faced Jerry Hall. 10 seconds, she said quietly. "Get rid of the dog." 9 seconds. "And I'll come down," Dean shouted. 8. "I want those papers, and I want the battery charger." 7. "What battery charger?" John called up to him. 6. "What do you mean, what battery 5. John called back, "What?" 4. "I said," Dean shouted, "what do you 3. "Mean what battery charger?" 2. "What?" 1. I said, now." There was a loud clack, clack, crack as all the minutes hands on all the clocks, on all the buildings, all across the Tickeridge Bulltalk Institute of Technology reached 12, and all the hour hands snapped to 4. The chimes and bells and bongs and gongs and cuckoos all sounded the fact that it was 4 o'clock. "Hey!" Ding yelled. "Wait a minute!" Whatever he proceeded to say next was drowned out by the sound of doors flying open all across campus and the din of hundreds of students flooding out of their buildings and talking and laughing and shouting and singing and blah, blah, blah. As before, many of them swarmed toward other buildings and entered one by one in tick-tock regularity for their next class. But also, as before, many of them were finished their classes for the day. They dispersed throughout the campus to lounge around and loaf about and to throw frisbees. Just as on the day before, the frisbee throwers deployed around the open field. And just as on the day before, as though in response to an invisible, silent, secret signal, all the frisbee throwers threw their frisbees at the same time. And all the frisbees flew up toward the same place in the air. And they all smacked into the hovering ding. "Stop! Stop! Stop! Ouch! Stop!" he cried. Took both hands off of the controls to swat and swing at the frisbees as they all zipped and wobbled into him like a flock of colorful plastic birds. Some frisbees hit the overhead rotor and caused it to shake and flap. One hit the rear rotor and jammed in it, causing it to stop turning altogether. Without the controls and rotors, only one thing could happen, and it did. Ding shouted, "Ah!" Plunged to the earth. He landed on his feet and tried to roll forward as though doing some somersault, but the personal one-man helicopter threw off his balance and completely tangled him up. So all he did was crash in a heap. The droning of the motor stopped. The happy, jokey shouting of the frisbee throwers stopped. In fact, the whole field became silent. Then the silence was shattered by the Templeton twins shouting, "Yay!" and the professor murmuring, "My goodness." Ding staggered to his feet, tore off the knapsack and flung the personal one-man helicopter to the ground. He turned to run at the Templetons, but after a single step, one leg buckled under him. Possibly it was broken. In any case, he lost his footing and collapsed onto the ground. "Now, we can call the police," John said. "Wait a minute," Abigail said. "What's that noise?" It was a combination of a roaring motor and a blaring car horn. They looked around until they saw its source. Charging into the driveway of the campus, barreling up the road toward Jerry Hall, and then bouncing and blaring at them over the same part of the field that they had driven across, came the black SUV. "Oh," John said. The black SUV roared past the twins and their father out into the center of the field, where it stopped next to the collapsed ding. The driver, who, as you very well might have guessed, was Dandy Dean, got out, ran around to the passenger side, opened the door, and helped his brother get in. Then Dandy Dean shut the door, ran back to the driver's side, got in, shut his door, threw the car into gear, and drove off with a loud rev of the engine, leaving behind a wake of torn up grass. In seconds, the black SUV was gone. Questions for review. Number 1, did you guess what's going to happen? Number 2, no, you didn't. Number 3, please don't embarrass yourself. Let's move on. And that is the end of chapter 15.